and welcome to the Free Your Geek podcast. I am your host, Jay Free, and welcome to Fantasy Fable Friday. In the twilight heart of the Starveil Grove, where light and shadow never part, one vow forged a hunter and a legend. You're listening to Starveil, the Oath of Frostwing, a 6-part origin story starring my Daggerheart character, Sylvaris Frostwing. Before the name Sylvaris Frostwing was whispered in legend, he was simply a fairy wanderer of the endless twilight, one voice within the Starveil Grove's living heart. This 6-part origin series follows his transformation from student to hunter, from protector to exile. When a swarm of glass-winged locusts devour his homeland, Sylvaris swears an oath that binds him to the Grove's survival, and to the shadows beyond its borders. What begins as duty becomes destiny, as beauty turns to ruin, and a single vow forges the hunter the Grove will never forget. Welcome to Starveil, the Oath of Frostwing. Previously on Starveil, the Oath of Frostwing. Beneath the eternal twilight of Starveil Grove, young Sylvaris discovered a creature with wings of glass and hunger in its heart. What began as a single flutter in the leaves has become a silence spreading through the forest. Episode 2: The Swarm of Glass Wings. Starveil Grove had never known silence like this. Morning light, if it could be called morning, fell through the branches in cold ribbons, sharp and colorless. The hum of night creatures had faded, leaving the hush of a held breath. Sylvaris stood where he had found the dead birch. Around him, the moss looked bruised, its silver sheen dulled. The shard he had taken the night before pressed against his hip, its edge biting through the leather pouch. He tried to believe the grove would heal itself. Trees always mended. The forest always returned. Yet something in the air felt wrong, stretched thin like a bowstring. Even the river ran slower, its current hesitant. The wayfinder's duty was to notice these changes, to mark them before they grew. But this was not a pattern he knew. This was hunger with wings. A single chime trembled through the stillness, then another. The sound came from above, soft at first, then multiplying, hundreds, thousands, until it became a living storm of glass. Sylvaris lifted his gaze and saw the sky break apart. They descended in a glittering fall, locusts with translucent wings that caught the faint starlight and flung it back in blinding flashes. Each one no larger than a fingertip, yet together they turned daylight into a shimmer of silver shards. When they moved, the air itself seemed to splinter. The first wave struck the treetops. Leaves vanished in seconds, stripped to veins. Bark peeled away like parchment. The locusts fell in a tide of clicking hunger, devouring flower, roots, even the moss that muddled footsteps. The grove screamed in its own language, groaning trunks, cracking limbs, the flutter of beasts fleeing a home that was no longer theirs. Sylvaris ran. His lantern bounced at his side. its foxfire dim against the radiant swarm. The air stung. Each wingbeat carried dust that glittered as it settled, coating his skin in frost-fine shards. He shouted a wordless call, a plea meant for anything listening, and the grove answered with chaos, branches splitting, rivers turning milky with ash. He reached the heart clearing where Leraith had taught him to read wind currents. The mentor stood there now, staff raised, weaving sigils of light that burst against the swarm like sparks on stone. Magic flared, brief and bright, but the locusts only shifted course, circling faster. Their wings cut through the light, refracting it into razor lines. The wraith's spell broke. The swarm struck. A wall of bodies hit them like rain turned solid. Sylvaris threw up his arms, felt wings slice across his cheek, his chest, his thoughts. He could barely breathe through the powder that filled the air, a storm made of living glass. He stumbled toward the older fairy, caught only a glimpse of eyes bright with sorrow before the shapes were gone, swallowed by the shimmer. The ground burned cold beneath his feet. He fell to his knees, pressing his hands into the soil as though he could anchor the grove by sheer will. Beneath the surface, he felt roots thrashing like serpents. The forest that had always protected them was dying too quickly to understand how. He forced himself to crawl forward, pulling a fallen branch from the wreckage. It broke apart in his hands, hollowed by the insects until it crumbled to dust. The smell of decay mingled with something metallic, almost sweet. When he looked up, the canopy was gone. Only the endless glitter of wings remained, blotting out the twilight. Then, as suddenly as it began, the chittering lessened. The locusts rose, lifting in a spiral that shimmered with the light of 1,000 mirrors. Within moments, they were a drifting cloud moving east, leaving devastation in their wake. The silence that followed was heavier than the noise had been. Sylvaris stood unsteady, his body cut in shallow lines that glowed faintly with silver blood. The clearing looked unrecognizable. Trees lay skeletal. Pools of sap caught what little light remained, hardening into amber scars. He saw no movement, no mentor, no kin, no life except for the faint flutter of a dying wing near his boot. He knelt. A single locust lay there, its glass shell cracked, inner light fading. Carefully, he reached out and lifted it. It was lighter than air, fragile as a promise. For a moment he thought he heard a sound within it, not chittering, but a hum, low and mournful. Then it went still. The last glow dimmed from its body, leaving only a shard of transparent carapace in his hand. He held it up to the twilight, watching how the stars bent through it. Somewhere behind the numbness, something hardened, a shape taking form around the grief. He felt it settle in his chest like ice, a vow without words. He slid the shard into his pouch beside the first one. The edges met with a faint chime, almost a heartbeat. Around him, ash drifted through the air like snow. He realized he was shivering, though not from cold. The grove was silent now, emptied, echoing, broken, but it still waited for him to move. He turned once toward the direction the swarm had gone. Beyond the horizon, a faint shimmer still lingered, as though the sky itself bled light. Every instinct told him to stay, to rebuild, to mourn. Yet beneath that ache stirred something else. Resolve, sharp and dangerous. The Wayfinder's oath had always been to guide and guard, but now he would hunt. He tightened the strap of his lantern until the leather creaked. Its light flared, catching the edge of his scars, and for the first time they looked like marks of purpose rather than pain. He would find what had done this. He would not stop until he understood. The grove whispered one last time as he stepped away, the wind brushing through blackened branches in a voice too quiet for words. The hunter had been born. I hope you enjoyed this chapter of Starveil, the Oath of Frostwing. Join us next week on Fantasy Fable Friday as the adventure continues here on Free Your Geek. Thank you so much for listening.